My name is Arthur Amiotte, and I was born on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota in 1942. I was born into a Lakota family. My great-grandfather, whose name was Standing Bear, was born in 1859, and he fought at the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876. He traveled with the Buffalo Bill Wild West show to Europe. He was performing in Vienna. He was injured and had to stay behind, and met and married a young Viennese woman who learned the language and returned to this country as his wife. Upon their return, land was being allotted, so they moved on to their allotments and became successful farmers and ranchers. They had 3 daughters, one of whom was my maternal grandmother, Christina. And they established a fine farm and ranch and reservation community. And with her guidance and her know-how, how to handle money, first of all, they became fairly successful. And as a result of that, Standing Bear became the chief of his community. And so he became a respected member of the community, as did his daughters and his wife. His wife, Louise, became something of a country doctor. She imported medicines and she attended to the ill. She became the midwife, delivered babies, and introduced new health and sanitary practices to the Indian people in her community. Because Standing Bear was a traditional Lakota man, he insisted on the practicing of the traditions. He himself was a traditional painter and drawer, formerly on hide and then later on muslin and then eventually on paper. It's from this family experience and admixture of types and kinds of people with different experiences in my family that I grew up as a young man and learned both the traditions and also the means of becoming an educated person. So it's based on these experiences, not only having learned the traditions from my family, but also having studied anthropology and native indigenous arts of native people of this continent, that I am now a functioning artist. I take the best from both worlds and attempt to synthesize these in my artwork. I started as a traditional studio painter, painting on paper in the gouache technique, which was popular at the time in the 60s. I studied with Oscar Howe, a renowned artist who introduced his students to painting Native American themed paintings on paper. I did that for a number of years, and then I broke from that and began experimenting. And in the latter years, in the 80s, then I began doing collage work. I began university in 1960, and it just so happened after that first year that Oscar Howe was still offering his summer workshop to Indian students. He spoke to us about using Native American themes, Lakota culture as the themes for our artwork, but it was essentially historical, somewhat romantic portrayals of American Indian life. What we were doing was typical of what people thought of as Indian art. So I did that for about until 1966. I was very taken with the new theories of creativity and experimentation, and so I began a whole different approach to my painting. So I did abstract paintings of not only reservation landscapes, but also I began doing paintings wherein I did abstractions of material culture items. And I did that for until about 1976. But I still didn't find my way. I still wasn't very happy with what I was doing. In 1980 then, I pursued a Master of Interdisciplinary Studies in Native Art History. And about 1985, I left university teaching and established my studio. I came upon the idea of ledger art. The idea of a ledger book, first of all, is an accounting device. And I thought, well, you know, this is a nice idea because in the process of acculturation, that is, the many changes that Indian people had to make, there should be an accounting system. And so I decided, well, why not a visual accounting system? So my collages then begin, and I thought, well, we can carry that one step further. The imagery that appears in the composition becomes an accounting of the many changes that the culture was undergoing. And I restrict myself to the years from about 1880 until about 1930. It's a time in many native cultures in the United States that people don't realize these changes were taking place. They were adapting to a Western frontier style of pioneer living based on non-Indian economics and material culture. So in my collage compositions, I attempt to account for many of those changes as they took place and to try to visually present them. I have found over the years that many young artists are very bitter. Many young people see these changes as being the destruction of the cultures, and yet I see it as an adaptation. Native people had two choices. They could adapt or die. You know, many don't give credit to their great-grandparents or their grandparents for having adapted to these conditions, and in some cases very successfully. Fundamental to all of this is that many of these groups that did adapt also preserved their traditions, their deepest traditions, their beliefs, their ceremonies, their arts, their traditional arts. That's what we see at contemporary powwows. We see the survival of these fine tribal artistic traditions. I don't see the anger at cultural loss as being very productive. I think we must continue as Native people carrying on our lives and treasuring the best of our cultures and the whole evolution now and the proliferation of Native spirituality in whatever forms it exists. The arts is one avenue of cultural extension and preservation. What I have hoped I have done through my art is to visually represent and portray these forces that brought about change, but also that people made positive changes. They adapted, yes, but in addition to that, they managed to preserve their ancient and profound beliefs. My life has been one of attempting to balance things out. Where things got out of balance, then I just did something to get back into the groove of doing things with and for Lakota people. And so the whole content of my artwork is about Lakota-ness and the various changes that it has undergone. What I have hoped I have done through my art is to visually represent and portray these forces that brought about change, but also that people made positive changes. It doesn't mean you have to give up being a Lakota in order to survive in a non-Indian world. You can still maintain yourself as such and do things and continue to do things with your own people. All of it is what you do to survive.